Hello, welcome or welcome back to the channel. So since you guys seem to like me talking about the relics in the game, I thought I would do something fun to do a similar thing with the light cones. Now most of the light cones in the game I do think are generally pretty fine, even if some of the paths don't really have that many great options. The main problem with a lot of them is that they just don't really have any synergy with any of the characters, or just so restrictive that you would just rather use something more consistent, you know? We're gonna look at some of the more questionable ones and see what can be done to fix them. Now I'm not gonna talk about any of the 3-star light cones since they aren't really meant to be good. They're kind of just meant to just have something in the early game and to also just kind of have some duds where you're just pull it, you know? So starting off with one that is just so confusing to me, which is Dreamville Adventure. In case anyone doesn't know what this does, because I wouldn't blame you, it gives you a team-wide buff corresponding to what the user did. So, if they used a basic attack, the team gets a basic attack buff, and, vice versa for all the other abilities. The main problem with this is that it's just so much setup for not that much payoff. On most supports, you don't really want to skill more than once every couple of turns, because most of their buffs last more than one turn, Even if you get the buff, a 12% buff at base is not really that much, and most of the other options are just a lot easier to use and way more consistent. Past and future is not super great either, but it's at least a bit more consistent. And even then, a lot of the newer Harvey characters already give good enough buffs on their own that you'd much rather use something like Dance 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 to allow your DPS to attack as much as possible, rather than just giving them more buffs. Because there's kind of come a point where giving them just more stats just kind of become a bit negligible, So at least the way that I would make it a bit more interesting is change it to that when you use your basic attack, your team gets a 6% damage buff, and when you use your skill it does the same thing, and then also the same thing for the ultimate. So it would add up to about an 18% damage increase total, and if you have all three of the buffs active at the same time, then the buff is permanent for the rest of the battle. But the buffs for each ability only last for 2 turns. Maybe one if it's too strong, but I think 2 is fine. But I do think it would be way too hard to activate if it was only 1 turn. I feel this would at least make it a bit more interesting option. The other light cones would still probably be better, especially the dance, because action advance forward is really good. But it would be good if you just didn't really have any other option, I guess. I don't know. The problem with a lot of these light cones is that you can't really fix them without just changing the entire effect, But moving on to one that is just really confusing to me, because it feels it's made for a character, but just doesn't really work on that character, which is Flames of Far. It feels it's made for Firefly, but it just doesn't really work on Firefly. Because it's you have to use more than 25% of your max HP, which not every character can do, only a couple of characters can do that. I think Mayday and Blade, when he uses his skill, and Firefly can do that. I think that's basically it. And the effect only is activated every 3 turns, which I think is probably the worst part of this, because it does give a pretty sizable buff at S5 being 50% damage increase, which is a bit easier to get since you can buy this from the MOC shop. But the buff only lasting for 2 turns means that you're always going to have a off turn where you're just not going to have the buff. Also, most of the characters that would want this just have way better options that you could use. Both Secret Vow and Sound Hunt fulfill very similar roles. And while they don't give as big of buffs, they are way easier to activate and have actual uptime. Or on Firefly, because it feels that's kind of who it was made for. Because you would skill with her, which would use a chunk of her HP, and then you would use her ultimate, and then once your ultimate's gone, the buff would be back. Fall of an Aeon is still just way better. It's kind of just way better on most destruction characters, honestly. So at least what I would do is make it trigger every 2 turns instead of 3, so that his actual uptime, and give it a new effect that increases your max HP. Since there is no 4-star destruction light cone that increases max HP. I believe one of the only ones is Mayday's light cone. I think there might be others, I just can't remember them. You could maybe add a bit of a damage effect, but it already gives a pretty good damage effect already. I think the main problem is that there's just not many characters that want it right now. I think is the main issue with it. And it's you can't make the effect stack or anything, because it's if you made it stack 2 times, then that would be a 100% damage increase, which kind of feels a bit way too good, But I do really think that at least making it activate every 2 turns will help a lot, so you can actually, use the effect. But to be honest, like, a lot of the destruction light cones could be in this video, because I feel like destruction just has like the worst set of light cones in the game. like the moles is another one that comes to mind. It's just like really bad. But I want to kind of try to keep this to at least like 1 light cone per path in this video. But like another one that immediately comes to mind for me is We Will Meet Again. This one is definitely a contender for the worst light cone in the game. Like, it's so bad. In case anyone doesn't know what this does, because I wouldn't blame you because no one uses it. After you use a basic or a skill, you do a percentage of your attack as additional damage to a random enemy that was hit by your basic or skill. This is just so awful for so many reasons. 1, it's not really giving you any sort of like actual damage increase, it's just giving you like an extra hit on enemies. Like 2, it only does 48% of your attack at base, and yeah, it does go up to like 96% at S5, but it is like way harder to get this at S5 because it's a battle pass light cone, which is kind of insulting, I'm gonna be honest. Like, you're spending money for this, like, it's so bad. And also, it doesn't activate on your ultimate. Why does it only activate on, like, on basic and skill? Like, I don't know. To be honest, I think that if you really wanted to fix it, you would just rework the entire thing. But at least, what I would do to try and make it at least somewhat more thematic. So to make it the effect triggers an extra time per debuff on the enemy for a max of 3 times. And hitting an enemy with a debuff increases your attack by 10% for up to 3 stacks. So it increases your attack, and then that attack makes the extra hit do more damage. This would at least make it like a bit more of a fun option on characters like Kafka, where you just use your skill and then it would hit like 3 enemies and then would just do a bunch of extra hits at the same time. Though I still think that you would much rather just use Good Night Sleep Well. But like literally any change is just better than what it currently is, because what it currently is kind of just like, why did they make this? Like, I'll be honest, I didn't realize before making this video how many bad light cones there are. Like, I thought most of them were like okay, but there are a lot of very questionable ones to say the least. So if you want to maybe see like another one of these videos, let me know in the comments. And while I have your attention, maybe like and subscribe. It would definitely help me out a lot. For the last light cone in this video, it is another battle pass light cone. I know, shocker. There really is a trend with them just being kind of awful. I am of course referring to Return to Darkness. Like the last one, I doubt anyone knows what this does, and it's just kind of like, why did they make this? So firstly, it increases your crit rate by 12% at base and up to 24% at S5, which, is like a fine effect. No, that's not too bad. But when you do a crit, there is a chance to dispel 1 buff from the enemy, and this can only be triggered once per attack. This is bad for a multitude of reasons. 1, why is this a hunt light cone? Like, why is this on a single target DPS? Why would you ever care about dispelling a debuff on that kind of character? Like, why is this not for Nihility? Or even like Harmony? It just doesn't make any sense. 2, it's only a 16% chance at base, and only goes up to 32% chance, which is horrendous, because more than like half the time, it just does nothing. So all you're getting is the crit rate, which you might not even care that much about half the time, because you might already just get enough crit rate from your relics anyway. And 3, if the enemy doesn't have a buff, this actually just does nothing. I don't understand what was the point of this. I don't even know what character you would want this on. Like, to be honest, the only way to make this light come better is to just completely rework it. Like, there is no saving this effect, I'm gonna be honest. Because even if you made it 100% chance, like, you still just aren't going to care a lot of the time, and would just rather just have something that increases your damage. So what I would do is make it so that when you get a crit, it increases your crit damage by 10%, stacking up to 3 times. And if you have 60% or higher crit rate, the stacks can go up to 6. Now this might be like a bit too good, so you might need to like change the numbers a bit, but I feel like this makes it like way more sense as like a light cone that benefits from getting crits. Stellar C is still probably like the best option on most characters, but I could see it being good on maybe someone like Fei Xiao, like a lot of follow-up characters who just want like get a ton of hits and can just like stack up the crit damage a ton. I do think that Stellar C would still probably be better anyway. Now these are definitely not the only ones I could have mentioned. Like, there are definitely a lot more bad light cones. The problem with light cones right now is it's just the insane power discrepancy between a lot of the 4-star ones and a lot of the 5-star ones. A lot of the 4-star ones just kind of suck. I'm gonna be honest. And then a lot of the 5-star ones are just like either like insane, or just like only good on the character that they're made for, you know? I don't know, you guys are going to have to let me know in the comments if you would like to see more of this kind of thing. And you know, do definitely let me know what kind of content you guys would want to see in general. You know, would you want to see more discussion videos? Would you maybe want to see some gameplay videos as well? Would you maybe want to be interested in me talking about like Hoyo's other games, like maybe like Genshin or something? Or would you rather me mainly just stick to Star Rail content? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.